Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where investors with a special emphasis on couples begin, continue, and deepen their journey to financial freedom together using the powerful vehicle of real estate investing to do it. Today, we have a fantastic guest on the show. His name is Bronson Hill, and Bronson is a very impressive guy. Through his equity investment company, Bronson Equity, Bronson controls over $60 million in multifamily assets. And he also runs a large in-person multifamily meetup in Pasadena in the SoCal area called the FIBI, Pasadena Multifamily Investment Group. Bronson truly understands the investor mindset, having spoken individually over the phone with over 1,000 investors and raised over $15 million for his real estate investments. Bronson is the author of The Single Best Investment Strategy During or After a Pandemic and is a regular contributor to YouTube and Bigger Pockets. It was such an honor to have Bronson on the show today. He really dropped a lot of wisdom. And today we really focused on mindset. And the reason we focus on mindset is because tactics fall out of mindset. And so this is kind of a microcosm of the entire show that we've been doing over the last couple of months. So we really hope that you enjoy taking that away. What did you find from the show?
What I really loved was that Bronson is so relatable. He's so down to earth, and he's really able to share his wisdom in such understandable terms. And I would really encourage everyone to listen from beginning to end and really listening to his big why of what drives him through and what keeps him continuing to invest.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and bring him on the show because I don't really want to waste any more time doing so. So let's go ahead and bring him on. All right. And we've got Bronson Hill on the show today. Bronson, how are you?
I'm good, Derek, Sophie. It's so great to be with you guys. I love what you're doing with this show. I love how you're really reaching couples and trying to find a way to create partnerships that are great for, marriages and relationships as well as for, the finances, what I think is really a wonderful thing.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're so excited to have you here as well because you've got an amazing track record and a lot of experience. And so we're just going to jump right into it if you don't mind.
Let's do it. I
All
can't wait.
right. Excellent. Well, Bronson, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got first interested in real estate from the beginning?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in real estate. I've always thought it's interesting. I actually bought my first house in my mid-20s. I was living in another state for a job, bought a house, ended up keeping it as a rental. And then years later, I was looking back and thinking, man, this has been like the best investment that I've had. And so I ended up buying a small single, just buying houses as I went along, partnering with a family member and buying some houses in an area where houses were cheap. And then I had this pivotal conversation with a relative who said, "Why don't you do multifamily?" And I said, "Well, I don't have the money." And he said, "You can raise the money." So, long story short, I've raised over $15 million for different real estate deals. We've got close to be as soon we'll have closed on 1,400 multifamily units, mostly in the South. And I've spoken with over 1,000 individual investors or couples about investing. So it's just been quite a ride. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and I'm really excited to see what's next. So
Yeah, I really appreciate you telling that story. But one thing that I wanted to drill down on a little bit is you said to make a long story short, and we gotta dive into the details there because you went from one house to now you're talking to 1,000 investors. So let's get into that a little bit more, right? Um, in every investor's looks like their experience level and when every investor gets started, there's usually a natural transition from single family to multifamily. And I know that you kind of touched on that, and you said you started raising capital and everything. Can you dive down a little bit deeper into that exact moment where you said, all right, I think it makes sense, like the mindset shifts from being just me, the lone wolf working on single family, to now understanding that if you work together with other people, there's kind of an unlimited potential here. Can you
yeah,
talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. Yeah, a lot of people start out and they think I'm going to become financially free through real estate and start buying houses, and then they realize they've got like me, 4 or 5 houses, and you're like, this is kind of a lot of work. And I was thinking, well, I need to get to 30 before it actually becomes like I can actually viable to leave my corporate job and go do this. And so this conversation with my cousin, who I hadn't seen in years, he says, why don't you do multifamily? And the idea of actually being able to raise money and it actually being less work. Sometimes we think of, well, if you're buying, my first multifamily deal was a 225 unit apartment complex. You say, well, how in the world could you do that? I could never do something like that. Well, in reality, I started a local meetup in Pasadena, California, where I live. I had 50 or 60 people at the first meeting, and how I had so many is I partnered with someone who had a meetup, and we started a multifamily meetup. So here I'm a co-leader there. I had no multifamily experience. A guy came up to me and said, "Hey, I'd love to invest with you in one of your deals." And so I'm thinking, oh, okay, great. So I get coffee with him and he's like, I show him a sample deal of what a deal could look like. It's not a real deal, this is what it looked like. And I said, well, how interesting would that be to you? He said, well, I'd give you $100,000 for a deal like that. So I had also met another guy at the same meeting that at first time I met him as well. And he was somebody who was syndicating. He was somebody who's putting a deal together. So I'm raising money. So again, I raised a small amount of money, $100,000 for this larger deal. And now I've got some experience. And so from there, then I was able to partner with a well-known syndicator operator, just say, hey, what if I help you with raising money? And I have calls and we do, we're kind of work the pipeline because they had a huge audience. They just were working mostly with active investors, people that were trying to do it all themselves. And I said, what if we create this? We kind of said together, what if we create this pipeline for calls and for ways to connect and really have those conversations with individual investors and show them how to passively invest. So again, that's kind of how I had 1,000 calls. We raised over $15 million. And just in the last, 6-8 months, I've started my own group called Bronson Equity. So it's been a journey, but again, I think the shift really happened when I realized people are doing this. It's a known thing. It's just because that I haven't heard about it doesn't mean that it's something that's not real. And so there's a lot of stuff out there in finance that's totally doable. It's just if you don't know how to do it, or you've never heard of it, it kind of sounds really like, I don't know anybody that does it. I don't know anybody around that. So having this relationship with my cousin was really pivotal to see, oh, this is something that can be done. He's been doing it for 25 years and he's like, here's how you do this. And so that's kind of how I got going in it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's so relatable. And I love how you started small, but also with a ton of hustle. And I love that motivation there. I think that that's really, really important. Let's talk a little bit about those earlier days as well, because there's a lot of people out there that are maybe just starting out, right? And they're starting to learn, and maybe they have a spouse, or maybe they've got someone in their financial picture with them. What kind of purpose drove you through all of that? I know it was financial independence in the beginning. Has it remained financial independence? What's your driver? What makes you excited about the space?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, I have a couple pretty significant drivers. One is just really wanting to have freedom of time. I'm a guy who has a lot of ideas, I love traveling, I love reading, I read a ton, and just being able to have time to do things that I find enjoyable and passionate. I mean, those are things that I want to do. And I want to be able to be a good dad and spend time with my daughter and have that available time. And so I've been working hard the last few years, but to actually be able to make that transition and say, okay, I'm going to leave this corporate job behind and transition fully, like that's a big deal, right? So to be able to do that, so the big why is creating more space and time for that. My bigger why, and kind of the whole thing that drives everything for me, is really the cause of fighting human trafficking in the world. There are 20 to 40 million human slaves, which is crazy. I mean, that's just a crazy number, but it keeps getting bigger every year, and it will keep getting bigger until we actually start doing something about it and start caring. So there's different ways to get involved with that, but I feel like that's a cause for me that's really worth living and even for dying for. There's certain things that are, but that I think is one of them. So to me, my goal is to create resources and income and wealth to be able to help address and solve that issue in some way or some part of that issue.
Wow, Bronson, thank you so much. That is so inspiring. And what I love about what you said is that it just transcends. It really gives us such an anchor and a foundation in what we're doing. And again, it's so just really inspiring. It's leaving me speechless. So thank you for sharing that. And again, a lot of our listeners are new investors, and a lot of them may get started and may get interested, but they may not go the full distance. What advice can you give to them as far as like the mindset? What do you think is critical that helped you achieve all of the success?
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question because a lot of times, we can get, and I'm the kind of guy, I got a million ideas. I can get fired up about so many things. So what is it that actually, can cause people to finish and continue on until they get to their goal? And what I would say is that who you hang out with is really important. So the idea, there's a saying by Jim Rohn that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And maybe it's the 5 couples you spend the most time with, especially as couples. So if you're around people, I mean, you can look down to like just the people you spend the most time with. What is their income? What is their eating habits? How do they do? Are they active physically? Do they, how do they treat their kids? Like I mean, it's very similar. So the idea, if you want to get at the next level, you got around people that are kind of doing those things. But a big thing is you have to keep the why front and center. Because if you lose the why, then it's like, well, I'm just doing this. I'm working, working my full-time job, and I come home, I'm tired. I want to look for real estate deals. I don't want to do this. And so it's challenging for a lot of people, especially if you have kids and you're trying to manage all that. Is how do you do this? And so I think keeping the why is incredibly important. I will say one way that is helpful for some professionals is to passively invest, which I really didn't get for a while. I just thought, oh, I've got to go buy a house, or I've got to buy a duplex, or I've got to buy this. And I know friends that have 5, 10 units, and the thought of owning something else is just overwhelming. So what I'll say to the listeners, if you're overwhelmed about buying and getting something else, then I would say consider looking at passive investing, because you do a little bit of work on the front end to vet the team and vet the deal. But once you get in, it's passive. You get the quarterly distributions and your ACH deposits in your account, and it can really teach you about ways that you could scale even passively. Like, so maybe you're doing your active and your passive thing. So sometimes it's not always like I've got to do all this myself. It's no, how can I do this? Because when I actually looked at how much my time is worth, and I realized how many hours I was spending on these houses and different things, it was actually the same or less money than if I got into a big multifamily deal as a passive investor. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't realize is I actually have to value my time. If I'm a dentist or a business professional or something, I've got to see how much is my time worth. And if I spend all this time, even if I'm not the property manager, which I wasn't, but it was still a kind of causing mind space of it's taking up space, and I've got to do all this and do that. So I think keeping the why in place, being open to passive investing, and then being around people that will get to that next level. Those are 3 things.
Excellent answer. Thank you very much. I think that that's super important to bring to drill home again is the passive investing. It's so important for people to understand where they are, right? Like most people who are busy, like, most the W-2 audience out there, they have full-time responsibilities. Like you mentioned, they've got kids at home, they've got a relationship with their spouse, and they're very, very busy people. They also want to be able to start diversifying and understanding this mysterious place of investing in real estate. And I think that doing passive income investing is a perfect way to get in. Just like you, I wish I had started there too, because maybe I would not have gone down the single family route. I just would have went from passive multifamily investing directly to active multifamily investing. Another thing that maybe we can add is the passive investing also adds a little bit of it adds a layer of experience in terms of what to look for in investments and operators. And I love the scalability part there. So thank you for adding that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Passive investing it's very interesting as well, because you do get a lot of tax benefits that are, I mean, there's kind of some unfair advantages, particularly of multifamily
Mm-hmm.
syndication, because, somebody invests 100K in one of our deals. If there's a cost segregation study, which there usually is, which is just a fancy way to say that they bring all the depreciation forward and you can use it when you want to use it. So it'll be common. You'll get a 70 to $85,000 passive loss, that even though you haven't made money on the property, you've got this loss. So you can basically defer a lot of the taxes that you're getting, or if you have other real estate gains, you can sometimes defer that. So it's just another strategy, particularly if people have homes that they're, especially these days, they're selling, because right now it's not a bad time to sell a house, but then you have all those gains. But putting money into a passive syndication is a great way to be able to defer a lot of that for 3 to 5 more years, which is huge.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more there. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom there too. I think that one thing I wanted to touch on too is the fact that you used to work a W-2 job, right? So I wanted to ask you what superpowers have you developed maybe from, your W-2 experience or from outside your W-2 experience and stepping into the multifamily space? What helped boost your success in multifamily from those previous worlds?
Yeah, so I've done a few things. I was for about 5 years. I was a youth pastor after college, so I got a lot of chance to present and work with people and help people on a spiritual level and just life purpose level and all that stuff. And then for 10 years, doing the medical sales, medical device sales. And I think what I really learned is I started out kind of being a guy that was the obnoxious sales guy, right? I was like, here, you should just look at my product, whatever. And I didn't really get very far doing that. And so what I learned is if I just went in and I asked a bunch of questions like, oh, are you seeing this problem? What do you do in this case? What do you do here? Whatever. And they would give you all this information and you're at the front desk and they would tell all these problems they have. And they'd be like, wait, who are you again? But it would get you kind of to like a place where you actually could have a conversation and you could help them. So I realized that raising money is really, and sales in general, it's all about being a great helper, helping people to solve a problem. Now, sometimes I don't have what someone needs to help them with their problem. And I don't benefit if I help them. But I want to be the kind of person that just helps people because it's the right thing to do. And you never know what will happen. I just feel like you put it out there in the universe and you help someone and what goes around comes around. And you don't maybe the best investment is to do some other type of investment. I'll say, no, it's not right for you now, but look into this, or here's this person or whatever. And that's a very trust building thing, right? Because then people start to get the sense that you're not just out there just trying to raise money for something that's your thing. And even in the middle of that, I will be honest, there's sometimes you have to check your own motives, right? Because I'm biased, or I'm incentivized to bring people into my deal. So it's not that I have to look at myself too and say, no, really, what is best for this person, and continue to ask those questions. But I think, when it comes to multifamily, there's kind of two major routes. One is the raising money route, to be kind of a capital partner. And if somebody has sales or likes working to be on the phone and likes going to events and things, that's a great way to go. The other side is somebody who's maybe a more great with analytics and finding deals and analyzing numbers, spreadsheets, and that kind of thing. So there's kind of a couple different routes. There's more than that, but that's a great way for people to start, either finding a deal or finding the money.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you. Very well said. And I couldn't agree with you more there too. The multifamily industry has got so many different needs, and there's so many different roles and hats that you can play, right? And you wouldn't want to do a 200 unit apartment complex on your own like you did, right? Like that would just
Right.
be like that. And that talks to that flip of mindset from single family to the multifamily space. So, with that being said, why don't we talk about your very first multifamily deal? It sounds like you had a lot there. There's the $100,000 that you came in, right? That you came in on. But is there one that you actually took an active, a management role in? And when you did, can you maybe explain about how you were able to find your way into that?
Yeah, so it's a good question too. When I talk about raising money, you're not really allowed, unless you're a licensed broker dealer, to just be a money raiser. So when I'm talking about raising
Hmm.
money, it's that that's something you do bring to the partnership. But I've walked every single property. I do my own underwriting. I'm going in, in the beginning, I didn't really know as much, but I'm looking at all the numbers and I'm trying to learn. And over time, you learn. And so I'm a part of the asset management calls, which are just basically, here's what's happening on the property, here's the vacancies, here's some issues that are happening, and then of course dealing with investors after a deal. That's more of the investor relations piece. So I think it's important to be involved on different levels. But I think so. I guess, I'm sorry, your question was more in relation to that. It's just as far as how do you can you maybe repeat the part of your question? I think I kind of got a little distracted by what
No,
you're
no
saying.
worries. No, it's okay. I was just going to ask you, like, how did all this work on your very first deal where you
Right.
you entered into like a more active role, right? Where you
Right.
were, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's basically it, of just, trying to just help in any way I can, really coming in and adding value. In this particular deal, it was like, yes, we need money. We're looking at this. And I had a lot of, in your first deal, I mean, I had conversations with 62 friends and family, and zero of them invested. Right. And I had a conversation with other people. So it's like, you just keep trying and you keep getting out there. But I do have this belief that a lot of times our ability to, or our success in life is sometimes indicated by how much we're willing to fail. So it's the
Mm.
idea. There's this quote from Michael Jordan that, like, I've missed, 10,000 shots and 56 game winning shots. And, I've gone this many places and lost. And he's like, and that's why I'm successful. It's kind of because I keep trying. So it's kind of the idea of, you just get out there, you just try to find out what you can do. If you make mistakes, it's okay. You learn, you pick it up, you go again. But I think in that particular deal, it was just about, bringing money, doing some stuff on the property, trying to say, hey, what can I do? And in the process, just learning.
Mm, love that. I have to ask you this question. I know that Sophie's probably looking to ask you something here soon, but I've been eating all this up. This is great stuff. I love that what you just said about, it's all right if you make mistakes. You got to pick the ball up and just keep walking, right? Even if it looks like there's no, I mean, 62 calls. The fact that you know it's 62 and not 61 or 64 means that you've done some reflection, you've done some tracking. You're very intentional about it and you're continuing to move forward. And that's a true marker of success right there, which I really love. But what I wanted to add, what I wanted to comment on here and get your reaction on was the fact that the school system, a lot of people that come into the W-2 world, right? Or they're advanced professionals, they're doctors, lawyers, dentists, those types of things, right? Engineers, they are punished, or at least they're punished in school for making mistakes. And so there's this internal fear counter that gets built up inside, right? And so there's a subconscious thing going on, right, that really is prohibitive to people that are coming from the W2 background to try to make efforts like this and then fail, right? Or at least have a temporary setback. That's what it should be. It shouldn't be fail. It should be failing forward. It should be learning to get to success, right? And I just wanted to talk to you and see if you had any thoughts or opinions on how to break that mold away, because I know that you were in the W2 world and this is two different mindsets, right? And so I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you how that came up for you.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Derek, because it is something for a lot of people is that we're just conditioned to like, if you collaborate, there's no collaborate in school. If you share, that's cheating, right? But in the corporate world, it's collaboration. And Robert Kiyosaki talks a lot about this, the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. As a couple, if a listener, if you have not read that or your spouse
Oh
hasn't
yeah.
read that, like beg, borrow, and steal to get them to read it because
Yeah,
it's
just get it
that good. It
now.
just will change your mindset. Now,
Mhm.
also, there's a book that I read a while ago called Before You Quit Your Job. And it literally talks about this topic. So it's a because it's a totally different mindset. When you're an employee, you can't make mistakes. You make too many mistakes, you're going to get fired, right? Like you just got to go in, you got to do this, this, and this. But as an entrepreneur, you have to make a ton of mistakes and you got to be willing to make mistakes. And then the biggest thing is you have to learn. And so the idea of just going in, and he describes in this book being an entrepreneur, which is what you're doing, whether you're still working, you're starting the side thing, you're an entrepreneur. It's like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and yet you're trying to assemble one before you hit the ground. And that's literally how it is, because you're like, okay, I've got this much time, I've got this much runway, and you're willing to try different things. I'll give you an example. In my business, I realized that I'm trying to grow my platform and educate more people and different things. Well, I found for me, the biggest thing that's helped me is creating these investor panels. So we do panels with three other, syndicators, or we did one on what's the best investment now, cryptocurrency, real estate, or precious metals. And we had three experts come on and debate that. And so my list grew by over 20% just from that one event. And so I've realized like the idea of adding value and putting these out there. But then I've tried other things where we did some advertising, we did other things, and it just didn't work as well. So again, you have to be willing to learn. But if you're afraid to make a mistake, and this is the challenge that he gets at in these books, is he says if you're an A student, a lot of times you just you're uncomfortable. You can't be a perfectionist doing this. You can't be somebody it's got to be perfect. You've got to be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to try. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try this. I'm going to learn this way. And the biggest thing is trying and learning, and just keep learning and learning from other people and learning any way you can. And then what happens over time, you get to say, oh, I'm figuring this out now. And hopefully, you'll find a way to do it. So I know that's what you guys, it sounds like you're resonating as well. You
Oh
got
yeah,
similar idea.
definitely. I think especially those last couple of statements that you had, the perfectionist attitude. That's something that I personally have been struggling with for a really long time. And as soon as I shook that attitude away, our whole experience and what we did accomplish with real estate investing just multiplied a millionfold, right? Like it was like something was removed, right? Like there was this blockage, right? And as soon as you remove that, it just all everything starts flowing, right? And you don't know what questions to ask until you actually get started. But if you're paralyzed in analysis paralysis or fear of making a mistake, which is the same thing, right, as analysis paralysis, then you'll never get started. And so for me with this business, like I still struggle with that sometimes. And I've constantly had to have, my coaches tell me, look, you just got to take some action. You have this list of people, just call them, just do that. Don't worry about setting up the whole, communication thing. You just need to call them and get some results. And that's scary. And it's hard because it takes work. You know that you're going to be doing something that might most likely fail. And because we're so constrained on time and energy, we don't want to do that, right? So we rationalize, oh, that's not it. And I'll try to figure out something later. And then it never gets done. That's the patterns that I saw in myself. Have you seen something like that as well when
Well,
you were
yeah,
starting or?
life has I call it an action bias. Like if you just simply, you don't know where you just have a goal and you just start doing something, And that's the big thing for somebody listening is just like, oh, I want to do this, whatever, but it hasn't happened in the last couple of years. But we just got to start doing something. What's the next thing you can do? And if you just do the next thing in front of you, and then you kind of keep, okay, reflect, did this work? Did this not work? And you just keep taking action over time, you're going to realize, like, man, I really got a lot done, or I really learned a lot. And so a lot of times what gets us to, to keep us from going to our goals, we just don't have it all figured out. But if we just start taking some steps, we start going to a meetup, we start looking at houses, we start making offers, we start analyzing deals, we start telling our friends and family, we start a MailChimp account and just start putting things out there. This is what I'm doing. And it's just amazing that just starts to lead to other things. And so, and then you figure it out on the way. You learn, like, oh, I tried this and this didn't really work. I was sharing with my sales stuff. I go in and I just feature and benefit and
Yeah.
blah, 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 is what I do. And it didn't work. So I made a shift, right? So that's kind of the same way it works with all this stuff. It's just like, well, people figured it out. So if I just keep my eyes open and I keep my hands active and I'm doing something, you're really going to be able to accomplish something great over time.
I totally agree. I think one thing that I wanted to say on top of this before maybe Sophie, she wants to ask a question. I've just been going away, is that I found that the fear of getting out there and in front and going in front of people, right? In the digital age, it's so much easier now than it used to be. Imagine doing something like this and trying to put a message that falls on deaf ears in an audience of people. Like if you have a time scheduled and you're getting up and you're speaking in front of people, and then they just shut down. That's one thing. That's fear that you'll have to get through. But here in the digital age, it's so much easier to reach people quickly. And if it's a message that doesn't resonate, then it just doesn't get views and it just doesn't get pushed along. So, but if you do find something, all it takes is one or two times, and then that's it. You're exposed. People know you, so you never know until you try, and you shouldn't have that fear behind you of, you know, uh, potentially not putting something out.
100%. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before, on the show, but just the idea that when you share your authentic story and you share who you are and the story of the things that you're going through or you've been through, even if there's difficult things involved with that, I think there's something that's really attractive about that, because it's not just information, right? It's like, it's my story, or it's my failures, or it's things that have happened that didn't, life's what's happens. It's what happens when you're making other plans, right? You try to figure out what you're trying to do, and it doesn't always turn out the way that you have it planned. So I think the idea, when you see something that is real and authentic and people are talking about failures and life and different things, I think that is a really attractive thing for people that hear. And I think for you guys doing this as a couple, like, it's such a beautiful thing, because that's, there's a lot of life that happens. There's a lot of things that you'll share that are like, okay, we don't really tell this to like our families or whatever, like we're sharing it on the air, so people love listening for that reason, right?
That's right.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And again, thank you for your authenticity. And it feels like for me, it always feels like I get to be a little bit selfish because I'm sure that your time is so valuable but we get you for, an hour to ourselves just to really dig deep. And so thank you for that. And also every investor, they have such a rich journey behind just the transactions you see. Like, we put, oh, we closed on this deal on the website. But really, like you said, there's so much behind the scenes. It's never a linear path. And with all of the success you've seen and with all of your experience, I'm curious, what still surprises and delights you about this whole investing journey?
That's a really great question, Sophie. I think what really surprises and delights me is just when people really understand and they see the benefit of passive investing, they see the benefit of real estate, and they see how it can change their life. Because regardless, like, real estate, I mean, okay, it's great, it's whatever, but it's what it does for you, right? If it gives you that freedom of time. Because having enough money is one thing, but really, I think what we're after is having more time with our kids, having more time to pursue the things we want to do, to write the book we want to write, to travel, to do those things that we are passionate about. But I think when people really kind of go from like, I'm just a busy professional, I'm going to be working, I'm 40 years old, I'm going to be working then for the next 25 years doing this job, working 60 hours a week. And then they realize, like, oh my gosh, this actually works. I put 50K into a deal, and all of a sudden, like, I'm actually getting distributions on this. And oh my gosh, we got to refinance 2-3 years later. And oh my gosh, I've doubled my money. Like, there's things like it's when the light actually goes on for people and they're like, there's kind of a way out of this. There's a side door here that you don't just have to kind of go the way everybody goes. You can kind of choose another way. So to me, that's, I think, what's the most exciting thing, because not everybody gets it and not everybody gets it right away. I didn't get it right away, but when I got it, it was like something just changed. And all of a sudden I was like, this actually works. This is real. And I just want to do as much of this as I can.
Amazing. Just what you had said right there is what we live for. We love that as well. We love those light bulb moments that people have when they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Why aren't people doing this? Why isn't everyone doing this?" Right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what we live for too. So that's really great to hear. I love that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the grit that it takes for you to be able to put together your first deal? I mean, you mentioned it casually that you went ahead and you said, okay, I'm put together a meetup. I know that there's been months and months, if not years, of preparation behind that all happening. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you did to help prepare yourself to do all the things that you did?
Yeah, I mean, I think, realizing that there's going to be a period that, you're going to be putting in a lot of time, and just what does that mean? And to do that, sometimes it's not, I have to be working way more. It's just what can I give up? So to me, I started giving up my TV shows. I started giving up things that I love working out. So I work out almost every day, but I don't want to give up time with my daughter. So I had to try to figure out where can I cut to be able to do that. Right. And so I think that, in the process of seeing this happen, I guess, what really has changed for me is just really kind of reprioritizing what's important. Because, really, they say the average adult watches 4 hours of TV a day. So if you just think about somebody's, and I know a lot of people listening to your show are probably not watching 4 or 5 hours a day. They may be, but, just really, even in the sense of listening to a podcast, it's great. But the thing that's really going to change you is actually taking the action and just making those goals and doing it. And so for me, last couple of years, I've been to a goals event, just 2.5 days of clarifying your values and setting goals. And I think that is really important, because at the end of the year, it's like, well, what did I get done? Okay, I did that. What was my even goal? If you have no, what is it? The Alice in Wonderland, so, well, which is the way to go? Or how do I get home? And it's like, well, where do you want to go? He's like, I don't know. Well, then any way is fine. So you don't really know
Yeah.
where you're going. Any direction is okay. But if you have a specific target, and the more specific you can get on, in 5 years, this is where I want to be. I want to be retired. I want to be this much passive income. I want to do my own. I want to have this many hundreds of units or whatever. Like, it's all possible. And that's the thing, is when you shift in your own mind that, like, if somebody else has done it, I can do it.
Mm,
And really taking the ownership of, like, you know what, I can figure it out. And
excellent.
that's how people get to the next level, is they just
Love
make that
that.
decision.
Love that. When I was first starting out, I always thought that this mindset stuff was just kind of like a small piece of it, right? I always thought that it was like, well, I need this injection every once in a while here and there to kind of, like maybe once a year or something to do goal setting. But I know what I want, and I'm gonna get there, and it'll be fine. But maybe you can confirm this for me, but when I started thinking bigger and started setting goals, that's when the tactical things like, researching what a commercial loan looks like, and, networking, and, doing all those things that you should know to build the vocabulary up of starting to work on your business. I found that it was almost 80% mindset in overcoming fears, overcoming things. And once you worked on yourself to get through that, right? Then there's all the tactical stuff that can kind of move forward. Would you agree with me there? Or what would you say would be the appropriate, like if someone's just starting out, what do you think they should work on first, right? To get to be exactly where you are?
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote by Tony Robbins that says, it's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. So the first thing you can do is make the decision that, okay, I want to change my life in this way. I want to have this certain thing happen. And so that's the first thing. The next thing is just to find other people that have done what it is you want to do. So, and starting a meetup is a great idea, even if it's 5 people at a coffee shop. You can also do. We're coming out of COVID now. The cash flow board game. Some people do. They'll do that as a community event. They'll teach that, and that kind of sets you as a person of value with that group. But yeah, there's different ways to just get around people that are at the next level. And I will pay a lot of money to be around people at the next level. I'm part of a group called Entrepreneurs Organization. I pay thousands of dollars to be a part of it, but I have 6 guys. We meet every month for 4 hours and we talk through business issues and life issues. And it's great. I go to events where, there's very successful investors or syndicators or just wealthy people. And I just try to go and learn and just network. And I think that, there's two things that really transform you in real estate. And this is what we talk about at our meetup a lot is basically the first thing is networking. So it's, how you treat your network is how you grow your net worth. And so it's kind of the idea of who you're around, how you're helping them, how you're treating them. And the other thing is education. So networking and education. So you need to learn, you need to go to events they're going to teach you. There's an event on syndication that the real estate guys do. It's a great event. So I try to go to that event as much as I can. There's other events that you can learn different things from, or you'll also have networking opportunities there as well. So those are the two things I think, networking and education, that can really help people to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just want to kind of go back to what you said earlier because you really shifted what sales means because sales to the average person can sound, kind of greasy, but the way you put it in terms of like this is it's an opportunity for all of us to help others to find solutions to problems that the people we're trying to help may or may not know, right? Same thing with networking. So, can you help a listener who may not have the greatest connotation with networking? That might even be the first obstacle to why they're not networking because they feel weird about it. How can you help them shift what networking means the way you help to shift what sales means?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sophie. The idea that I think about with networking is it's not just shaking hands and just going around and meeting a bunch of people. It's really trying, when you talk to people, trying to find out what they're really looking for. Because people go to a networking event, they're typically looking for something. They're looking for a partnership. Maybe they're an investor looking for a deal. Maybe kind of my story of having a meetup, and I found the guy who had money looking for a deal, and I brought him the guy who had a deal looking for money. Right? It's just connecting those two people. As we've been on this as we've talked here, I mentioned I was on a podcast earlier, and there's our, friend, his name's Tyler, and he has the Elevate podcast. And I was like, I got to introduce you guys. So after this, I need to send an email and introduce you guys. So I think that would be a valuable thing to do to introduce you. So that's networking, right? So if I can bring two people together or a group of people together that they both get value from, because none of us have all the money. And none of us have all the deals because we're limited on time, we're limited on resources. So if I can be someone who's in there who's just simply asking questions, trying to help someone, I'll share this little side note. Um, One of the biggest breakthroughs I had in my whole time doing real estate was I went to this event that was a very expensive. It was thousands of dollars to go to. And basically I was there. Somebody had mentioned this quote of make yourself valuable to valuable people. And I'd never heard anybody say that before, but I was like, what does that mean? And I thought about it. I was like, wow, like I get a lot of value out of this certain person who's at this event as well. I get a lot of value out of their stuff. So I was like, I need to go to them and just kind of learn what their challenge is in this area of raising money, because they had a huge network. They did all kinds of active, and like I mentioned, this syndicator I was able to sponsor with or to partner with. And so I just basically said, hey, I want to talk with you about this. And I said, hey, how does this work in this area for you? And it just opened up this big conversation. And then after this event, which was like a week-long event on a cruise, they basically like sent me an email the next day and was like, let's get this going. How do we get whatever? And that kind of led to this beautiful partnership. But a lot of people go to valuable people that are very much in demand and they say, hey, I want you to mentor me. I want, not rather than, hey, well, what do you need? What do you need? And if you can serve those people, because very few people are going to people that are very successful and saying, how can I solve this problem? What can I do to help you in this area? Don't just say, hey, how can I help? But try to understand a certain area. And that's a huge way that can open up big doors. So that's, to me, one of the biggest things that's really helped me in my real estate career.
Oh my goodness. Massive value there. Thank you so much. Great stuff. I
Yeah.
think that bringing that to every relationship, not only in commercial real estate, but also in your family and your friends and everything, will help you become a person of just bigger value. And I really love that statement that you said is become valuable to valuable people. I think that's awesome because, especially like, this because you know the world that we work in. And also maybe someone who's starting out can relate to this too. But when you're talking with brokers and you're brand new, right, and you're trying to find properties to underwrite, and you're trying to find properties, or on the analog side, if you're in the single family, you're trying to talk with agents, trying to find agents to underwrite properties with, you have to find the more value you add to that person, because you don't have a history with them. You haven't closed anything with them, which is value, right? You haven't closed with them yet. You haven't given them of anything. As a matter of fact, you're actually taking away from their time, right? So if you can flip that around on that head and just work with agents and brokers and try to focus from a contribution standpoint, like you said, the whole world will just open up to you.
Yeah, I agree. It really is revolutionary, and
Yeah,
it takes like, it takes a little bit of faith to believe that's going to happen, because it's not right there. Right? You're not getting the sale right away, but you're just saying like, hey, how can I create value? And you create enough value, you will always find a way to get paid.
of course.
Mhm.
And then again, it comes back around to a majority of this is mindset, isn't it? It's not tactics. It's how do I operate out of abundance and how do I help someone, right? And then you just trust, just like you said at the beginning of the show, right? That you just trust that things are going to come back all the way around somewhere. And that's just the way the world works.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, it is. It's what you put out there is what you get back. So I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bronson, just to kind of give our listeners a sneak peek behind the scenes, would you be willing to share like what
Sure.
your
Yeah.
average day looks like?
Yeah, so every day looks a little different. So that's hard to, say.
Mhm.
Obviously, today I have a couple of podcast interviews, which is great, spending time with you guys, and yeah, it's a variety of things. I had a few investor calls this morning, so I'll just kind of schedule those when I can schedule those, and then, yeah, it's basically whatever I can fit in to the day. So I try to schedule certain times for, okay, these days I'm going to go create some videos. So I try to create 4 or 5 videos a month. So I'll outline those, and I'll try to record once a month. I'll record 4 or 5 videos, send them over to my video editor, and kind of just get that all squared away. So there's certain activities. It's really, as you start to scale and do more with your business, and I'm happy to have conversations about this offline with you guys or any of your listeners, but um, there's really two businesses, right? One is the real estate business of actually going and talking with investors and buying real estate and this kind of thing. The other side is the marketing business, where I'm basically, you're doing podcasts, you've got your platform, you're putting content out there. I've got a free ebook, which is the single best investing strategy during and after a pandemic. It's at my website. People can get that at Bronson Equity. But so there's different, and that kind of, is a lead capture. So then I get their information, and then we can kind of keep them on our newsletter. So there's things like that. So you basically have two separate businesses, but I think it's really working on both. Because if I just focus on the real estate side, then maybe I run out of investors. If I only focus on this marketing side, then it's like I got this great content. People are like, oh, this is amazing. You got all these great resources and videos, but they're like, are you actually a real estate person at all? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's a both and. So, but they really are two types of businesses.
So that I completely agree, and I think that that's something that I can relate with as well. So I can say to all you listeners out there that want to become active on the syndication side, that is the worlds that you'll be facing. There's a lot there. There's a lot to do, but it's really good. It's very rewarding because being able to help so many people on a massive scale. You find, Bronson, Michael Blanc talks about this a lot, the law of the first deal, right?
Yeah.
Once you get your first opportunity down, you have a network base or you've got at least the systems behind it to start scaling up that way. And then you've also got your broker connection or the deal flow coming in, and now you have credibility. And so once those two pieces start working in conjunction, it's just like automatic, right? So
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's just, and that's all that learning process, right? Where you try things, it didn't work right, or you didn't invent it, it kind of flopped, but what can you learn, right? It's
you
okay. It doesn't
pick
define you. It just happens, and you learn.
you pick it up and you keep moving. I love that, man. I love that. Excellent. Okay, well, let's go ahead and head into the rapid round. This is at the end of the show that we do, and we like to ask all of our guests the same 5 questions. And so we'll go ahead and ask them here in rapid order. Okay. So,
Right.
question number one: what book has had the biggest impact on you and why?
So I think in my life, this is a little more life than real estate, but there's a book by Brené Brown called The Gifts of Imperfection.
Mm.
And so The Gifts of Imperfection, the first time I read it, it was like, I've never seen a book that so kind of combined the worlds of spirituality and emotional health and emotional development. So just talking about what does it mean to actually be wholehearted? What does it mean to be free of shame? What does it mean to actually own your story? And so to me, that has been a huge book. I would say on the other side of that, I'll just share there's one called Never Split the Difference, which is a book by an FBI negotiator about just day-to-day negotiations. It's an excellent book. It's a book I actually plan to read every year, both those books. So
Excellent. Yeah, that reminds me, I have to read that book again. I think that's Chris Voss, right?
it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great.
Yeah. Great, great book. Excellent. All right. Number two, if people wanted to emulate your success, what is the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
I mean, I think to emulate, I think you obviously have to choose your own course. I think you can't necessarily say I'm just going to be like exactly like this person and do the exact same thing. But I think if somebody's saying, "Hey, I want to be in real estate," I would say finding a deal. And I was open to either finding a deal or raising money. So I would say just start on both. Like start trying to tell your network. Okay, this is what it is. I would say the biggest thing is get a list of emails of all of your friends and family and all of your work people, whatever, and just start like sending out a weekly or a monthly MailChimp update. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm learning. Here's the events I'm going to. Here's the meetup I'm starting, or here's the meetup I'm going to. And just put pictures and things on it. Just put what you're learning, because what you'll find is a lot of people, those 62 people that I talked with the first time, they still knew me as medical sales Bronson, right? They didn't know I was like real estate Bronson, right? And so for you guys too, it's like they got to know that you're a real estate person. You got to say, I'm real estate Derek, and I'm real estate stuff. Like, so as you start telling that story, then, and it's not even just for, hey, I want these people to invest with me now. It's the idea of partnership that 5-10 years from now, that's going to be a more coherent story of, oh, this is how they came from here, and this is how this happened. Because people, they don't invest with you. It's like, oh yeah, this guy that sells used cars, and all of a sudden he's doing real estate now. Well, it's like that doesn't really make sense, right? Like, but how did that happen? And what's the process? And how did they get there? And how they turn that corner? So I think telling the story is really important.
Great. Such good advice. Thank you. Number 3, what small thing do most people not know about you?
Oh man. Well, I could say on the podcast, they wouldn't know I'm bald, but I'm completely bald. But I would say most people don't know, actually with a comment like that, they probably would know. I'm a real nerd. So I'm a real nerd. I love, my favorite movie is Nacho Libre.
With Jack Black.
With Jack Black. So it's just, I mean, it's wonderful.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Probably got some nostalgia attached to that, right? From earlier times. I love that.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Number 4, how do you like to unwind and restore your creative juices?
For me, fitness is a huge one. I love, running. I love getting outside. So whether it's a hike or a run. I have a stand-up paddleboard. I got that during COVID, and I live in LA, which is like been so locked down for so long. But getting on the water has been amazing. So just, getting out of the city, hiking, running, just a way, whether it's through just fitness or travel, to just reset. It's just a huge reset for me.
Excellent. Very cool. And last question, what is your favorite vacation spot that maybe you like to bring your family with?
Yeah. So I've actually traveled quite a bit. I've been in 34 countries, and I lived
Nice.
in Uganda in college doing some church mission stuff. But my favorite spot, I think, especially with family, Hawaii is amazing. Like I think probably my favorite one is the Big Island, like going to the Big Island of Hawaii. There's just so much diversity on the island. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very cool. I love Hawaii. That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Bronson. Well, just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that we have a hard stop here pretty soon coming up. And so just want to thank you for all of your expertise and everything that you bring into our audience and to the whole real estate community in general.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Derek. Sophie, it's really great to be able to connect with you and your audience. And I'd love to, if anybody wants to reach out, they can head to my website, or they can email me at bronson@bronsonequity.com. And I'm happy to talk real estate, life, partnership, any of that stuff. I mean, it's all great stuff. So
thank you so much for sharing all that. And I'm sure that you will be getting reach outs. There will be people that will be talking to you about the $60 million that you have under management right now. It's very, very impressive what you've built. Love your website and your portfolio. So all your listeners out there, please go out and check out Bronson on his website. We'll put his website in the show links as well for you. And in addition to that, wherever you're listening to this content, we would really appreciate you liking and subscribing or commenting, engaging with us, so that the algorithm gods can kind of move us up the chain so we get more exposure to more people and help out more individuals who are just like you, trying to find their way in this magical world that is real estate. So with that being said, that is everything we have for today. So without further ado, this is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
We're signing off. Take care.